This week, Kansas City finds out it will also no longer receive federal funding from the Department of Homeland Security. What that means is that it's now on its own when it comes to training local law enforcement on how to spot and react to potential terrorism. Kansas City Council members discussed the situation during a committee meeting at City Hall on Wednesday. In 2004, Homeland Security sent Kansas City $13 million. Last year, the city was provided with just over $1 million to help with emergency planning. Now there will be no more. Despite the recent bombings at the Boston Marathon, experts say cities are losing the money because the chances of a terrorist attack in Kansas City are considered slim. Plus, tight federal budgets as Congress pulling back funding. The Department of Homeland Security says it's now limiting its funding to the top 25 urban areas. Kansas City ranks 31. What impact does that have on our metro, Dave?
Well, the people with emergency preparedness say they are concerned and have said so for some time. Actually, I went back and looked. About 2 years ago, the federal government, in essence, told the Kansas City area, look, these what are called UASI grants, Urban Area Security Initiative grants, we're going to dry up for cities like Kansas City so they could send more money to the Bostons, the New Yorks, the Washingtons, that type of thing. And at the time, the chief, Smokey Dyer, said, look, this is going to be a problem for us going forward. However, and this has to be noted, in the early years after 9/11, the federal government poured millions of dollars into cities like Kansas City. In fact, so much money, so quickly, that 2 years ago, Kansas City still had $15 million in the bank from money they were unable to spend as fast as it was arriving. So the suggestion that somehow we're suddenly vulnerable today where we were not yesterday because we've lost this money is probably an exaggeration. It will have some effect. It won't be devastating.
You were reporting on this story this week, Bill. What was the reaction?
Well, the reaction was not good from Gene Shepard, the emergency manager, and from John Sharp, the chair of the Public Service Committee. Now, just to add to what David said, in 2011, according to Sharp, we didn't get any of the Homeland Security funds. The concern seems to be that because of what we purchased with what we got before won't be properly maintained, and the training won't be up to snuff as it should be. And one has to wonder, although Sharp did point out that the director has $188 million in discretionary funds, so they're going to make the full court press to get some of that money restored.
But the suggestion here is, though, that Kansas City really is not on any particular hit list. I mean, a slim chance of any terrorist attack here.
Well, as we tape this, it's actually the anniversary of the bombing in Oklahoma City. So I think people would have thought many, many years ago that a city like Kansas City or Oklahoma City aren't a target. But I'm not so sure that that's wise thinking. As you start to see, no one thought a soft target like the Boston Marathon would have been somewhere either. I think the most important thing to see is how City Hall reacts to this. Do they start to look for other ways to maintain the security principles they've put in place? Or they've promised as well to go back to the federal government and find other ways to get that funding and restored in Kansas City. Just because we're city number 31 in terms of urban size, I don't think that necessarily makes us not a target.
Bill.
Well, exactly right, because now we have the NNSA that's under construction. Kansas City is a federal regional center. We have the Federal Reserve Bank. We're the regional headquarters for the FBI, and the list goes on and on. So it does make one wonder who comes up with these lists and what is the criteria.
You also had a big front page story in the Kansas City Star over the weekend. Dave, you, along with your colleague Steve Kraske, was looking at federal government money and how much is being spent by the federal government and how much goes to different counties. It was about Sumner County in Kansas. But in essence, though, about how much the government spends and how much goes to different places. But is there a sense here that the government can only spend so much?
Well, right, A. But B, federal spending is great if I'm getting it. If you're getting it, it's waste and needs to be cut. That's the problem. The people in places like Sumner County would be appalled to see Kansas City getting lots of urban area security initiative money. They might see that as waste, but money that goes there for, say, agriculture subsidies is suddenly very, very important. The whole process of politics, which that story was supposed to illustrate, is that it is tough to cut federal spending because every program has a constituency, every program has a useful purpose. It's just too much when you aggregate it together, and that's why, as a political matter, cutting things like security grants is a very difficult